The Washington Lawyers Committee was created in 1968 in response to racial disturbances in cities across the country that followed the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Our founders believed that we could address the root causes of these disturbances by mobilizing the vast volunteer legal resources of private law firms in the nation's capital. Their premise was, if people can find justice in the courts, they won't have to take their issues to the streets. Over the years, our mission has expanded to include advocacy for women, immigrants, people with disabilities, and others protected by civil rights laws. We need to expand our representation in traditional civil rights areas for those who seek our help in combating discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and disability rights. We also want to increase our advocacy for children in the D.C. public schools and expand our network of school partnerships supporting our most needy schools. In addition, we want to press for reforms in police practices as recommended in our Racial Disparities Report, and increase representation for the thousands of D.C. inmates held in inhumane conditions and denied basic medical services. Carrying out these objectives will require new funding. We have a small but excellent staff of experienced civil rights lawyers. We also have access to hundreds of private attorneys from leading law firms in the city who volunteer their time on a wide range of civil rights cases. Our volunteer lawyers spend approximately 50,000 donated hours on committee cases every year on hundreds of civil rights matters. This combination has produced a decades-long track record of civil rights victories. We are effective because of our deeply committed attorneys and the law firms that volunteer vast amounts of time and expertise to our civil rights work. With this combination of resources, we get results far beyond what might be expected from a small staff with a modest budget. We measure our success by the positive changes achieved because of our civil rights cases and advocacy. Because of our work, hundreds of individuals, government agencies, and corporations that once denied basic rights in housing and employment to African Americans, Latinos, or people with disabilities must now follow the law. Hundreds of women and people of color now have leadership and policy roles in agencies and companies that once had glass ceilings that kept them in subordinate roles. And thousands of people with disabilities nationwide can now find housing and shop and work in buildings that are accessible. Many people don't realize that serious issues of discrimination persist in our society, but our clients and cases demonstrate that serious problems remain to be addressed. Second, most people have no idea about our unique capacity to mobilize the legal resources of the private bar to address these problems. Finally, given the committee's record of success, some people assume incorrectly that we are well-funded and do not need monetary support. In fact, the effectiveness of our volunteer attorneys depends on the work of our expert civil rights staff to prepare cases and provide vital co-counsel services. Our civil rights cases have achieved landmark judgments and settlements and compelled government agencies and corporations to change the way they do business. Our school partnership program brings tutoring, mentoring, and other enrichment services to thousands of at-risk inner-city children. And our advocacy has led to rebuilding over 100 dilapidated schools. Our recent report documenting racial disparities in arrests in the District of Columbia has focused the D.C. Council on enacting legislation that will move us closer to eliminating racial bias in arrests in D.C. Our cases have transformed the lives of thousands of clients and made real the promise of our civil rights laws. The committee's greatest challenge has always been funding. We depend on charitable donations to support our staff. Virtually all of our annual income goes directly to services for clients and to expanding our volunteer resources. We have never had a large reserve fund or an endowment. If we can identify new sources of support, we'll be able to meet our core obligations and address new civil rights challenges. New funding will allow the committee to hire additional staff to focus more resources on improving our city's public schools. Additional resources will also allow us to expand our new Jim Crow criminal justice reform work. This will involve new reports on prison conditions and the collateral consequences of arrests and convictions. We expect these reports to be as groundbreaking as our first one on racial disparities on arrests in D.C., and with additional resources, we can follow up our findings with effective advocacy. We need funding to hire staff to continue meeting the needs of all who seek our help, to obtain equal employment, fair housing, access to public accommodations, disability and immigrant rights, public education reform, and prisoners' rights. Staff is especially needed for our educational and criminal justice reform work, as these have become crucial civil rights issues.